Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance, where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard Hot Dance charts in immaculate detail, with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Last week I made the prediction that Martin Garrix would get a charting song or two alongside the big David Guetta release. In reality, that was wishful thinking, because while we did get the David Guetta breakthrough as expected, in reality this week was quite as hell with only 3 debuts. Not that I'm complaining. In between this last week of getting food poisoning, dealing with personal dilemmas, and catching the world's favourite virus in just a few days, don't worry, I'm all good now, getting a cooldown week was just about the best thing I could have had. But anyways, putting aside all that, our top 10, where Cold Hard P&AU remixed by Elton John and Dua Lipa holds steady in all categories at number 1 yet again, even if radio is continuing to fall slightly. Interestingly, there's the open question on whether the motto by Tiesto and Ava Max will hold steady enough to overtake it in the future, even despite being at number 2. Currently, it's seeming pretty stable for the time being, especially with radio making a noticeable rebound. Interesting, this might actually have a chance. What isn't stable is Peppers by Farruko at number 3, which despite good streaming is just taking hits on radio and sales across the board, not really a good sign. When I'm Gone by Alesso and Katy Perry had it even worse off at number 4. Radio is barely existent at best with this song, streaming took a noticeable hit and sales just aren't really strong enough to elevate it. Again, the only reason it's at this spot is because once again Do It To It by AAoD featuring Cherish at number 5 is losing even harder, especially on streaming and radio. It's going to take some time falling further down the charts, but it does seem likely to happen in the next month or two. I mean, we gotta hope, right? What's interesting comes at Dancing Feet by Kygo featuring DNC at number 6, which took a complete nosedive on radio with lackluster streaming but decent sales. It's right on the point of beginning to fall, especially with it not being embraced and throwing it out surprisingly fast. Can't really complain about that, but really, once you put aside the surprising climb of El Incomprendido by Farruko, Victor Cardenas, and DJ Adoni at number 7, which is holding steady in all categories, especially radio, we had the continued fall of Where Are You Now by Lost Frequencies and Callum Scott at number 8. When streaming is the only margin holding this up and that format is actually losing, this was gonna fall pretty fast. The question though is whether it will survive next week, given Swedish House Mafia are likely to topple its streaming, especially given it doesn't really have a format to back it up. I mean, on the other hand, we have Don't Forget My Love by Diplo and Miguel holding steady at number 9, which yes, will also lose on streaming, but it has the benefit of radio. Where Are You Now just doesn't have that. Thank God that Don't Forget My Love might actually last longer than I expected. I'd love to see it go a bit higher. Finally, that leaves a return to the top 10 for Moth to a Flame by Swedish House Mafia and The Weeknd at number 10. It's got streaming and sales that exist, I guess, and it will get a boost from the album bomb next week. The question is whether it's gonna last past 26 weeks once that album bomb evaporates. But we'll get to that later on when it happens. And on that note, our falls and fall-offs, where in the latter category, the only one of note is Intimidated by Catwalk featuring her dropping out after 20 weeks. I'm still kind of mind-blown that song managed to do as well as it did. It's going to be pretty damn high on the year-end list, and that's a huge win for Catwalk. Also helps that the song is goddamn excellent. But putting that aside, we didn't really have any surprising falls this week. For our year-end locks, we have Beg For You by Charlie XCX and Rina Sawayama at 23, and Broken in All The Right Places by Lost Kings featuring Modson off the gains to 25. Continuing to lose, we had Love Letter by Odessa and the Knox to 37. And off the debuts, we saw Running to Trouble by Alok and Bastille down hard to 44, and Sirens by Flume featuring Caroline Polachek down even harder to 46. Insanely predictable, and yeah, no worries there at all. But our jumps and comebacks, meanwhile, man, they're all over the place, even despite not being very many at all. I mean, in our returns, there was the expected return for Melody by Sigala back yet again at 42, but it also came back with Catwalk by RuPaul featuring Skeltal Ki at 32, mainly because of a remix featuring the cast of the most recent season of RuPaul's Drag Race that's significantly worse, and this is the entire point of the original. And I still like the original enough, so I'll let this slide for now. But that also leaves us with our only 2 jumps this week. On one hand, you can argue Down Under by Lude featuring Colin Hay rebounding to 38 wasn't surprising. It seems like a placeholder at this point. But on the other hand, the most notable jump came with Move Your Body by Own Boss and Sevek at 18. Mostly because of a remix with Tiesto driving up the streaming and sales. Again, it's a shame that said remix is really bad. It completely messes the lead and just doesn't sound remotely as clean as the original. But again, the original was so strong that I'll allow this temporary boost. It's fine by me, and it most likely will give the song a year-end list position, which is really, really good. But moving on from those quiet movements, our 3 debuts this week. Starting off with something that I did not expect to see at all. shocked that anything from that new Hayden James album managed to cross over, let alone a collab with SIDEPIECE that wasn't even released as a single initially. I mean, I guess the first track on the album, but still, I'm surprised. Anyways, here's the song, and man, this is excellent. The deeper house production builds a very potent atmosphere. The harmonies on the drops are gorgeous, the pitch-shifted vocals flow well against the indie-tronica elements, and the mixing is super clean and perfect for this kind of club-focused track. Honestly, there's little to nothing to find in terms of criticism. The whole track is just a really blissful trip the whole way through, and I love it. Excellent song, and easily a highlight from a pretty great album. Check it out. Okay, so this one seems to be in a similar vein to In Heat or Sahara by Henderson, a relatively unknown SoundCloud producer scoring a hit off TikTok virality, debuting remarkably high for a brand new single, and seeming to have a much bigger following than anyone expected. Anyways, here it is, and I'm kind of just confused on what the hell this is. I can definitely hear the funky elements that have been popping up a lot in TikTok hits, but at the same time this feels way more hellish and uncomfortable, focusing on a similar style of synth to Hentai Xander, with the heavy distorted percussion of Henderson or Player. I don't really have a ton to say about this from the song perspective. It's a relatively simple melody done through some pitch shifted vocals, with the synths and percussion floating in around it, but honestly it does what it needs to do, and it's nice to have some variety on the charts every once in a while. I don't know how much I'm going to come back to this, but for what it's worth, I don't hate this, and that's confusing to me. Am I the only one who thinks that this has been a really bad year for David Guetta? I mean, both Family and What Would You Do were flat garbage and will probably be amongst the worst hits for the year for me. And I think everyone wants to forget Trampoline even happened. So seeing him work with two of my favorite female vocalists in EDM just drained me. I'm sorry. I mean, both these singers can provide personality that he could never match, especially this year. And wow, this song proves that's all fault, because this is awful. I mean, putting aside the god-awful vocal effects tacked onto Ella Henderson's voice, or how her verse feels strikingly out of place thanks to Guetta putting her primarily in her lower range, the real crime here was how Becky Hill was wasted yet again. Her personality does somewhat still remain intact, but she sounds so compressed and isolated in the mix, with barely any supports. Plus, it doesn't help that the production around her is atrocious. Generic, blandly produced slap house with a melody that just never changes and sounds amateurish as all hell. For a producer who's been in the game for 20 plus years, the fact that it sounds as bad as it does just blows my mind. Combined with a vocal melody on the hook that gets unbearably annoying really quickly, yeah, I've got nothing positive to say about this at all. You know what? If you want a comparison to other Becky Hill or Ella Henderson collabs that have charted here, this isn't as lush or free as Here For You and Run. It doesn't have anywhere near the groove of We Got Love and Wish You Well. Hell, it fails at being pump-up material like David Guetta's last Becky Hill collab, Remember, which even despite its flaws has a goddamn pulse behind it. This is just lazy, wasteful, and a complete disappointment across the board. Folks, we've already given Guetta 2 embarrassing hits this year. Let's not make it 3, even if all signs indicate on this being huge. Just fucking wonderful. And that ends a quite cool down week where the best and worst fall out super easily. I mean, worst is obviously going to Crazy What Love Can Do by David Guetta, Becky Hill, and Ella Henderson. Just a complete mess. With best going to Lights Go Down by Hayden James and SIDEPIECE. Still amazed that that actually charted at all, even if it won't last. Next week, Swedish House Mafia looks set to decimate the charts. We'll have to see the level it reaches. Definitely looking forward to talking about it at length there. But anyways, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.